And over the Vikings the other day.
Yeah, you know what the ultimate irony in this game, Jay Will, was they were able to run the ball, and that was able to set up the deep passes that Bruce Arians won. Tom Brady had a really healthy yards per attempt. He was over 8 yards, had the big play to Scotty Miller, but it was all set up by the fact they were able to run the ball. So they got to understand that sort of complementary football is what they do so well. Over 8 receivers caught a pass, so they were diverse. We know how deep they are at the skill players. And then on the other side of the ball, they had 6 sacks. So I thought that was a really good win against an improving Viking team. And it's amazing what 24 hours does. Saints lose, Tom Brady and Tampa Bay wins. I'm not saying they're going to catch them, but at least now we're still talking about the division being up for grabs.
It's a great point because obviously the Saints have Kansas City coming to town this weekend. You want to use Mike's terms, maybe pencil that in as an L perhaps, or take a look at the fact that the Bucs are in Atlanta on Sunday as well, so there could be another one-game swap right there if things go the way the Bucs hope. Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, bud.
Keyshawn, J. Will's been brought to you by Goodyear. Whether you're on the field or on the edge of your seat, Goodyear wants you to embrace the unexpected. Every upset, touchdown, or fourth quarter comeback, and let it move you no matter what the season throws your way. Goodyear is here to help drive you forward. Goodyear, more driven. So think about it. Saints could lose their second in a row with Mahomes and company coming to town. We'll talk more about his great exploits a little bit later this morning. And again, Bucs in Atlanta, with Atlanta sort of coming back down to earth yesterday. Here is Bruce Arians after yesterday's performance, which was largely aided by a ton of Minnesota miscues, which we'll get into 1 second. Here's Arians on him flexing about his squad.
I think games dictate how much you run it. What's the score at the end of the third quarter? And, we were leading, so it leads to more runs. And Rojo ran really, really well, especially the last drive. And we wanted to set up some play action. Didn't hit it as many as we hoped, but that when asked early this week about our identity, I think we just showed our identity. We can do any damn thing we want to do.
Love the moxie and the bravado there. Rojo, by the way, if you're unfamiliar, the running back Ronald Jones. Key, let me ask you this. They did look good. Brady did spread it around. Wasn't a great statistical performance for Tom, but we should mention Dan Bailey of the Vikings had maybe one of the worst days for a kicker in decades in NFL history. He missed 3 field goals and an extra point. The field goals were 36, 54, and 46 yards. I'm not going to give him that 54-yarder as a quote-unquote chip shot there, right? But 36 and 46, when you need to make it, you start the season 1-5, you're 6-6, you got to have it. The day before this disastrous performance on Saturday, Mike Zimmer gave him a vote of confidence, and if you're a Vikings fan and old enough to remember, Key, the names Gary Anderson, or the Blair Walsh Project, or even a couple of years ago, Daniel Carlson, who missed 3 field goals in a game. They tied the Packers. Zimmer cut him 2 days later. House of horrors for Minnesota and Tampa taking advantage.
Poor Bailey. I'm sure there's going to be a few kickers at the facility today and tomorrow, kicking balls and trying to impress the coaching staff to try to get that job. But when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you gotta factor into what they did, and I understand what Bruce Arians is saying. They can do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. That's the identity of them. Look, Tom Brady did what he was supposed to do, right? He hit the shots downfield, less than 200 yards throwing, but 2 touchdowns. But at the same time, he hit the guys that were open at times when he needed to, and I think that is how you win football games in this league. It's not all about 400 yards in the air. It's about the 6 sacks on defense. It's about creating havoc on defense, turning the ball over, getting good field position on special teams, and running the ball solid so you can get into the play-action game. That is something that the Pittsburgh Steelers are missing. They're missing being able to get into some rhythm from a play-action standpoint, and I think when you look at it, that is how the recipe is going to be successful for Tampa Bay moving forward. They're not a 5-out, wide-open offense, catch and throw like Tom Brady did in his days in New England. They're more of a run-oriented team, play-action pass, get the balls in the hands of the guys, and play defense.
Hey, man, Scotty Miller got a touchdown the other day. He got a touchdown. I mean, we talked about that last week, Key, about how Tom Brady was targeting Antonio Brown, Mike Evans and company, and getting Scotty Miller involved. But that starts from the run game. I mean, look, the Leonard Fournette story is a completely different one. A late, healthy scratch from the roster, didn't play. But obviously, Ronald Jones rushed for 80 yards, LaShawn McCoy. It didn't make them one-dimensional. So I agree with you, Key. But it still feels like something is off. And I know that the Vikings left 13 points on the board. but it still doesn't feel like the Bucs offense can manage with another high octane offense, Key. It still doesn't feel like it's clicking the way when I see the names on a piece of paper, the way you actually want it to click. It seems like it's still slow rolling. And I don't know if I see a difference between this team in week 13 as opposed to what I saw in week 3. It feels like the same team that's still looking for answers, right?
Well,
or is it just me?
I think that they are trying to find their way and their identity. Much like Coach was saying, I know he's excited after the game. They won the football game. They beat the Vikings. They put the Vikings in the rearview mirror as the Vikings would continue to try to push to get into the playoffs. It's one of those deals. I think if they needed to get into a shootout, I trust that Brady can do it. I trust Mike Evans. I trust Antonio Brown. I trust Miller and Godwin and Gronkowski and Leonard Fournette along with Ronald Jones. I trust that the offense can get into the shootout. They're just going to have to do it the way Brady wants to do it and not the way that they draw it up in the way that they've always done it, whether it was in Indianapolis when he was the interim head coach or whether it was Arizona when he was the head coach for the Cardinals. They have to do it the way Brady wants to do it for Brady to be successful.
And I'll tell you this, Zubin, I mean, they're right there. They play the Falcons twice, and then they play the Lions while you have the Saints that are playing against the Chiefs, the Vikings, and the Panthers. So it could get it really interesting down the stretch.
Well, I don't think that they're going to win the division by no stretch of the imagination.
Totally agree. The numbers are not on their side. We'll see what happens down the stretch, though. Their schedule does seem to be, as Jay Will indicated, a touch easier than that of New Orleans. But keep in mind the Saints have the regular season sweep and the game in hand. More NFL discussion coming up at the top of the hour. But first, let's go from A to Z.
A to Z.
And From A to Z is brought to you by Redbox. Redbox has new movies at the box and streaming on demand. Don't miss Fat Man starring Mel Gibson. Visit redbox.com.
Also spell better karma and better momentum for them to actually break the longest championship drought in professional sports and win their first World Series since 1948.
How about that? The longest professional drought for a championship in sports since 1948. We should also mention that other teams over the years are standing resolute, like the Kansas City Chiefs, the Chicago Blackhawks, and others that have been asked to change their name, like the Atlanta Braves, have said they have no indication that they are going to do it, but the Indians apparently are. To the NBA, Kevin Durant scoring 15 points in his preseason debut for the Nets in a 5-point win over the Wizards. Durant, 15, 3, and 3, limited 24 minutes out there in his first action back in quite some time. Of course, you know, the injury recovery for him. Kyrie Irving scored 18 points, did not talk to the media after the game. Let's hear from Kevin Durant on how it felt to be right back on the court.
Yeah, it felt great, to be back in a routine and get back on the floor and feel like a player again, It felt great. Everybody's texting, calling, asking me how I'm feeling, and I can't wait till that's over with so I can get back into the swing of things and just feel like one of the guys again, So it was a good first